Okay, well, hello everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces and new people. Today we're talking about dairy products. So definitely, if you have any questions that I'm not touching on or specific products, feel free to put that in the chat and I'll try to address them. Before we even get into any of that, I thought it would be helpful to just review the basic definition of dairy products. It's really anything that's made out of milk. So yogurt, cheese, ice cream, butter, those are our typical ones. Base, and you can see the slide there. I just gave you some of the nutrition information for 1% milk. And I only did that so that if you're trying to compare products to see if there's any difference, it's helpful to go back to the original. I say this for every single food that you will ever be looking at. If you're wondering if something has more of something or less of something like fat, protein, calcium, whatever that may be, go to the original source and compare it before you do anything else. So you can see that slide. Next slide. So what's new? Some of this isn't necessarily new. It's been around for a little while, but there are more companies or manufacturers are joining in, or they're just expanding their offerings. And I will be completely honest with you, I don't really use a whole lot of dairy products myself. So some of this was really me patrolling the dairy aisles and trying to see what's out there for you guys now. So some of the things, there's always been dairy-free options. There's just a lot more now. So if you are someone that doesn't want to use actual animal dairy, then there's definitely more options for you. Many more manufacturers are trying to get in on the lower sugar because consumers, that's what we want. At least that's the way it's trending. So they're looking for ways to lower that sugar, whether that's natural or artificial. Protein has been the big name for years now. I mean, you look at some of the diets that have been around lately. Keto is probably the newest fad diet. Atkins, South Beach, they're all kind of low sugar, low carb, high protein. So that's still there, but even though dairy products are naturally protein containing, they're upping their game with that too. Then some of them are adding in some other nutrients. We'll talk about that. Dairy is trying to get in on the caffeine area because we're all tired and we need more caffeine. And then looking at, is it easy to digest or not? Because so many people have issues with dairy products, whether that's intolerance, being lactose intolerant, or just some of the proteins in there. So they're trying to find ways to make that more accessible to a wider range of consumers. Okay, so the dairy-free business that's out there. There's so many products out there that we really can't touch on them all. But why would somebody choose to go dairy-free? There's lots of reasons. I just listed a few. I mean, the biggest one is allergies. If you can't have it, you can't have it. And a true allergy is not just, oh, my stomach feels a little bloated or I get gas. It's more hives, the anaphylactic reaction. So that's a true allergy. The sensitivities and the intolerance, that's a much wider range of people. And the truth is, if we look across the whole world population, the majority of the world is lactose intolerant after the age of 5. So if you're experiencing diarrhea, bloating, gas, rumbly belly after having dairy products, you're pretty much along with 95% of the world's population. That's a naturally occurring thing. Other people for reasons of inflammation. So maybe you've been told that for you, dairy products cause more inflammation, and so you're trying to eliminate those. That's not a bad reason. And then other perceived health benefits, whatever that may be for you. There's a lot of things out there. Some are true, some are not. Some might be specific to you. Some might be across the board. Well, and I guess dairy-free too tastes. Like, I just don't like how it tastes. I'm not a big milk fan myself, but so I generally, if I'm going to drink it, I like almond milk, more for the taste than anything else, but other reasons too. So we can talk about some of those. Um, Another thing in that with the inflammation and the sensitivity, if any of you guys ever feel like you have more mucus, so whether it's sinusy or just like mouth mucus with having dairy products, that's a pretty common thing too, and that is or can be related to the dairy product itself. So if you find that you're more mucusy, more stuffy, congested, try eliminating dairy and see if that improves. And if so, then for you, you know you need to stay away from real milk dairy. Okay, so some more plant-based products. Again, this is not everything, but a few that are out there. In the butter world, there's been a growing trend of having different vegetable oil blends that are out there. Olive oil was probably the first, well, olive and canola oil. Those are some of the first big ones that you would see, and those are pretty common now, but also avocado oil is getting in on that, which I personally really like. Do any of you guys use avocado oil already? Raise your hand. No one? Wait, let's see. Oh, okay. Couple of you, but not too many. So if you've never used avocado oil, that's probably one of my favorites to use. For a few different reasons. One, if you like the fact that olive oil is lower saturated fat, high monounsaturated fat, because it is, avocado oil is very similar to that. But if you, like me, want to use your your oils for cooking, then I typically will recommend avocado oil over olive for that purpose, because avocado oil has a much higher smoke point. Because if you ever noticed, if you were warming up your olive oil and it started actually smoking or it smelled, that's not good. And avocado oil, you can have it at a higher temperature before it starts to do that. I've even like pan fried things in avocado oil and it's fine. Also the taste. So if you wanted to bake with your oils, but you didn't want that olive oil flavor, avocado oil is practically tasteless. And I still recommend it over canola oil. I know some people might still use canola oil, and that's fine. But if you are at all trying to avoid things that have been genetically modified, much of the canola oils out there are still in that GMO category. So, and avocado oil is for the most part not. So that's another good reason. Okay, so the one picture that's on there, Country Crock now has their avocado oil blend. Some of these you're going to have to kind of search around to see if the stores local have them. I mean, your best bets for a lot of the newer stuff like that is always going to be like a Woodman's that has everything, or more of like your health food stores. Those are going to come out with them first, and then Pick and Save tries, but some of those smaller stores they just don't have room for it. So you can always go to their websites. Even if you just do a Google search on stuff like that, find the company's website and you can find a product locator for that if you want to try it. And for the most part, all of these things are coming in both the tubs that would be easily spreadable. So if you're using it on something like toast or a baked potato, or they come in sticks. So if you wanted to bake with it, that's a little bit easier. And you can do that. They are also now coming out with butter. I mean, they call it butter, but it's not, obviously, using nut oils like almond oil. Part of my issue with that, like if you're looking at the ingredient list, it's not all almond oil. It can't be, because all of these plant-based fats are liquids. So in order to make them solid, they have to add other things. So like for almond oil, or almond butter, I should say, a lot of times they're using things like soybean oil, palm oil still in that. So if you didn't want those ingredients, then you're going to want to stay away from the products like almond butter. I keep wanting to say oil. But you can cook with them, you can bake with them. For the most part, they're all supposed to be like a one-to-one substitution for butter. And taste-wise, you'd have to kind of experiment. Taste is so personal that you'd have to kind of see. And then coconut, that was sort of the big guy on the scene, I don't know, 5 years ago. It's still there. but they make like coconut butters and things like that too. So always options out there for you. The coconut oil, that is naturally going to be solid unless it's warm. So that is a little bit more like butter when you're just looking at it. Whereas the other ones, they have to be made into a solid form for you to be able to use them. So what are the benefits of that? In general, it's just the fat content. So there's lower saturated fats because those saturated fats are mostly found from the animal product. So if you have issues with high LDL cholesterol, low HDL cholesterol, high triglycerides, then that might be a good option for you to help lower that LDL. Sometimes the products are lower total fat, but not usually, because fat is fat. In sort of, I mean, in general, there's the same gram amount of fat per serving in all of these fat choices. But if you are looking to avoid animal products, vegan, or different types of vegetarian, then these are also good options for you. In the past, it used to be that you pretty much had nothing, and now there's a ton of options out there. So experiment, go see what you like, see what you don't. My personal preference is always going more towards the avocado oil products, but I have not tried like the almond butters at all either. So it's an option. Oh, and one that's not on there. Well, it's not really dairy-free at all. It's dairy, but I'm going to stick it in here anyway because it's this category. Ghee. So does anybody use ghee? I'm going to go to the next screen. Raise your hand. Any ghee users? Oh, the same ones that are using avocado oil. Okay, so for those who don't use it or don't know what it is, ghee is really just like clarified butter, and all that means is that they've and you say processed, not in a bad way, but they've processed it to remove the milk solids. So if you're, again, lactose intolerant and you find that you have issues with even butter, ghee might be a good option for you. When you see it in the store, it looks different, and it usually comes in a jar. So it's not quite the same as that butter. It also has a higher smoke point, so like butter will burn quickly, but ghee will not. So that can be another kind of nice option out there. It's definitely more expensive, like when you see the jars. But again, you kind of decide where you put your money, what do you want to use it on, as far as health benefits. Okay, so some other plant-based products. Yogurt. That's, to me, sort of weird to say that we're using plant-based yogurt. But it's the same as sort of the butter world. They make yogurts. We've had soy yogurt around for eons. So that's not really any different. But now if you kind of stroll down the yogurt aisle, you're going to see more almond milk yogurts. You're going to see cashew milk yogurts. Coconut yogurts have been around for a little while now too. So there's lots of different options there as well. All of those, compared to regular milk yogurt, they're going to be a little bit lower in protein. And mostly because those foods that they're made out of are naturally lower in protein. So unless that manufacturer adds the protein back in, then if you're using yogurt for the sake of having protein in your diet, you're not going to be getting as much. So that's something to keep in mind. Some of these can be higher in sugar. So that's again where I'd say take that almond milk yogurt or that coconut milk yogurt, whatever it is, walk it over to the regular milk-based yogurts and kind of compare. Compare it to the regular versions and the lower sugar versions and see what for you makes the most sense. Just because the label is telling you that it's better on the front doesn't always mean that the nutrition facts on the back match that claim, if that makes sense to you. Because that front is all marketing. So look at the back, compare the things that you're wanting yogurt to be used for. Are you looking for the protein content? Are you looking for less sugar? What kind of sugar? All those things. And take a peek at that. I have not tried personally I don't think I've tried the almond milk yogurt. I want to say my kids have maybe, and they didn't push back at me at all on it, so it must have been okay. The coconut yogurts, I always like those because the coconut is thicker and fattier, so the mouthfeel is pretty similar because you want to go based on some of that too. Taste, texture can be different with some of these things. So that's the consideration. Okay, then we move into the plant-based milk products. And here again, like they can have whole aisles dedicated to non-dairy milk products. It's kind of crazy. So they have soy milks, they have nut-based milks of all kinds. I mean, you can find almost all of them out there. They have coconut milk, they have rice milk, they have hemp milk. So tons of options. Are any of them better than any others? It kind of depends on what you're looking for. Many of them will have added sugar. So a lot of times I get patients coming in and they're like, yeah, well, I drink this kind of milk. I'm like, okay, well, have you looked at the label? And then when they do, they're like astonished that what they're drinking actually has more sugar sometimes than regular milk. So just look out for that. A lot of the non-dairy milks tend to come in 3 different categories. They might call them original, unsweetened, and now my brain is lapsing on me. Original, unsweetened, and something else. Sweetened. I think that's the other one.
Vanilla.
So usually the unsweetened has absolutely nothing on it, and it's going to be very minimal carbohydrate, like maybe 2 grams at the most per cup. Whereas the original sometimes has like half the amount of sugar that regular milk products might have. So they do put some in, but then the sweetened is going to have just as much sugar as regular milk, if not more. But the difference is that it's not natural to that product. So it's all going to be coming from like, I mean, if they just put sugar as an example in there, then that's what you're getting. So to me, if you're drinking them to have less sugar, you're going to want to make sure that you're looking for unsweetened. They pretty much all, with the exception of coconut, they will have less fat than dairy milk. So if that's another reason why you're looking to get away from dairy, then any of these non-dairy options are pretty good. Coconut has pretty much the same as like a whole milk as far as saturated fat, unless it's a low-fat coconut milk product. So be aware of that. And then the nut-based products tend to have some fiber. So like almond milk actually has fiber, and that is not something that dairy milk would have. And it's really, have any of you ever made almond milk or cashew milk or any of that? Raise your hand if so. Okay, so there, no one. Try it sometime. Really, my husband refers to it as nut water. Because it's not, I mean, you can't really have milk, because milk is its own thing. But in order to make, it's really easy, so you can always do it. You just take your raw nuts and you soak them for, it's either 12 hours or 24. I'd have to look it up again. So you soak them, and then once you have soaked them, you just blend and blend and blend and blend and blend. And if you want to add like vanilla or a little bit of salt, you can. And then you strain it. So if you have cheesecloth or just I used a kitchen dish towel, and you strain it out. And what you have is your nut water or your nut milk, and it's homemade. Now the difference is that, I think it's even on the next, no, it's not. So like if you're making homemade, it's not going to have those added nutrients that your store-bought ones will, because no milk, whether it comes from a cow or not, has vitamin D naturally in it. So they do add vitamin D to all of these. And store-bought almond milk and all those other non-dairies, they will have calcium added as well. So if you do make your own, you're not going to get those benefits. So kind of beware of that. But it is super easy to make if you ever want to experiment with it. Okay, so then the next thing on our list is trying to reduce sugar. And this has kind of been consumers, so at least, I mean, there's a bigger section of them. Consumers are pushing for manufacturers to have less sugar in it so that we can make that choice of whether or not we want to add it, which I think is good. I have some opinions on the downsides of that, though, and I'm sure I'll share them with you. So some of the products that are out there, there's this yogurt called Too Good. Has anybody tried that? Have you seen it? No? Okay, I saw it at Walmart. So if you're a Walmart shopper, and I didn't look at Woodman's, but I mean, they have everything, so they probably have it. So this yogurt is supposed to be too good, and it's because it only has 2 grams of sugar in that container. So like regular yogurts, if they're plain, you're gonna get at least 6 to, depending on container and all that, 6 to 10 grams of sugar per container. So the fact that this only has 2, it is a lot lower. How they get that, it's sort of like making Greek yogurt. They sit there and strain it more. So more of that sugar comes out. It's a really slow straining process. But what I don't really like about it is that they then add sweetener. So they're using stevia. So if you're trying to stay more natural, it's the most natural one you can have because you can grow your stevia plant in your backyard. But the fact that they're still adding that bothers me because another thing that most of my patients hear from me is trying to get rid of the sweet, especially artificial, from anywhere that we can in our diets. So this is a cool product because there's less natural sugar, but if you're still trying to make your taste buds get used to less sweet, it's going to taste the same. I mean, as far as sweetness. And if you're not a stevia fan, then this also wouldn't be a product for you. Another one that's in the milk world is that Fairlife brand. That has become more popular. Have any of you tried that? No. Okay, so another one out there if you really want to be trying to use it. We have, in my house, we've tried it. My kids and my husband both liked the regular, that one that's on the screen, the blue. But then I got the chocolate. And of course, I tell everyone, read your ingredients. And what did I not do when I bought the chocolate? I didn't read my ingredients. Oh, and I tried it and I'm like, oh, what artificial sweetener are they using in this? Like, this bothers me. So they take out the sugar because they're ultra filtering it. So it's taking away the sugar that's naturally found in your dairy milk. But then they're adding in, on this one, I have to refresh, sucralose, which is Splenda. So if you're not a Splenda fan, or if it bothers you, then the chocolate version, at least, is not for you. But their regular white milks do not have that added. But this is a common theme with not just dairy products, but any kind of modified food that's out there. They might take out sugar, they might take out some of these things that we're thinking are bad, but they're adding artificial sweetener. And I've said it like 3 times already, but that really bothers me. So let's try and avoid that if we can, for a host of reasons. But even if you just look at the simple version, we want to get our taste buds used to less sweet stuff. And we can't do that if we're constantly putting sweet things in it, whether it's artificially sweetened or naturally sweetened. Okay, so the caution on that, the first one I already mentioned, the use of alternative sweeteners like stevia or sucralose. If you're fine using those, then go for it. If you're not, then look out for that. The use of other carbohydrate sources. They might put in some sugar alcohols. They might put in like that maltodextrin that's listed there. It's just carbohydrates by a different name. So if your goal is to have less carbs with your choice, then you got to look for those too. But that's, again, a good reason why we compare labels. Don't ever assume that what they're saying is what that product really is. Look at the label, compare it to the option that you would otherwise be getting. Another thing I put on there is chicory fiber. I don't know if you guys have seen that or used any products that have that in it. There's definitely some yogurts out there that use it. And at least in our household, my family does not react well to chicory root fiber. So it's not pleasant for them. There's a lot of gas. There's a lot of bloating, rumbly bellies, like loud rumbly bellies. It's not a bad thing to be eating at all, but it's just not everybody reacts well to it. So if you are all sensitive to that, kind of read your ingredients pretty closely, especially on the yogurts. There's some ice creams too that use that. And then texture, mouthfeel, not necessarily in terms of the milk in particular, but more so with yogurts and things like that. because definitely some of them can be more grainy, some can be a little, even just differences in the thickness and whether or not you like them. But it takes experimentation to see what you really like. Okay, so that is your reduced sugar products. Then we get to higher protein. So dairy products naturally have protein because that's what's in milk, that whey protein and casein. But regular old milk has 8 grams per 8 ounces. So if you are looking at a product that is promoting that it is high protein, compare it to that. How much more does it have compared to regular old dairy milk? Some of it's not very much, so it's, in my opinion, it's not really worth the extra money that you're spending on it. But so why do we care? What good would it do? In general, protein helps to satisfy hunger. That's why if any of you have tried any of those high protein diets or know anyone who has, for some people, they find that they are not very hungry throughout the day when they have that higher protein. So dairy can provide that protein source. Protein is also good at helping to stabilize blood sugar levels, which I talk about a lot since my main focus in my area is diabetes. So I'm always looking to help stabilize blood sugars. Whether you have it or not, it's a good thing. So protein helps to do that by slowing down how fast you're digesting and slowing down that release of those carbohydrates into the bloodstream. So whether it comes from dairy or not, it's a good idea to have the protein at every eating occasion. But regardless of the fact that dairy products naturally have protein, some are adding even more. Mostly because it's such a big thing in the nutrition world to make sure we have our protein, like Greek yogurt. I mean, that wasn't really a thing, I don't even know how many years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago. It wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. It used to be there was like one brand, and now there's a million, and you can find it everywhere. But Greek yogurt naturally has more protein, mostly because of that straining process. It filters out more of the liquids and keeps all the solids. And then there's other things like milk. So there's a Horizon organic high protein milk. I have not seen that in any of the stores by me, but I also didn't use the locator to check it out. But I've seen it online. So they have added more protein to their milk so that it's higher protein. There's also, and I wish I had a picture of this on here. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I saw it at Walmart again. They have the Oikos. They have a protein drink in the refrigerated section by the milk stuff. Most of them are all somewhat coffee flavored because they're also getting in on the caffeine game. But those have like 25 grams of protein per bottle, I want to say, and I think the bottle was 12 ounces. So compared to regular old dairy milk, you know, it's more than double what you would get. They add more whey protein to it, which is a very common protein powder supplement that people would get. So this is kind of just doing it for you. But at the cost of, I want to say it was like $3 a bottle for this drink. I'm sure gas stations have it too, that kind of thing. But I mean, if that's what you really wanted, another option is buy whey protein and add it to your own milk for a much cheaper price tag than $3 for a 12-ounce bottle. But that's another option. I mean, a similar thing if any of you guys use meal supplements like Boost or Ensure, those kinds of things, they specifically have ones that are high protein, like Boost High Protein is an actual product. So they're based on milk, and then they also add more protein. So it's sort of like that. I mean, these can be kind of nice options if you are using it as a meal replacement, because it gives you that good amount of protein to last. Or if you like protein bars, but you're kind of sick of chewing, then you could use the protein drink instead as a way to do that. Oh, and the protein drink that I saw, it is, again, sweetened with stevia. So we are back into that, let's make it sweet so that people like it kind of thing. Then some of the added nutrients. I mean, vitamin D and vitamin A, those are always added to dairy milk, and they have been for years and years and years and years and years. mostly because they were finding that people were lacking in those. But the vitamin D also helps us utilize and absorb that calcium that's in your dairy products more effectively. But some you'll see are adding in omega-3s. Some are adding in more probiotics. Some are adding in fiber. So really, I mean, it's just sort of like every other area of food. Manufacturers are going to try to get in on whatever is the trending superstar in the nutrition world. So for a while it was probiotics, and that's still a big thing. But then it was omega-3s, and so everything that you saw added omega-3s. Some of it's fiber. Like we're adding fiber to milk now and yogurt. I mean, I'd rather you eat it, but they're adding it. So you can find those things if you just look across your dairy aisle. And if that's what you want, great. See how it tastes. See what the mouthfeel is. See if you notice any benefits to it. In all of these things, if you're trying to use it for a certain benefit, I'd really recommend that you simply choose to change that thing alone, if that makes sense. Like don't, oh, I'm going to try 5 different things and see what works, because you're not really going to know. So add or subtract one item for a few weeks at least and see if there's any noticeable difference in whatever it is you're trying to do. And then if not, don't waste your money. Because a lot of these things with added nutrients, aside from the vitamin D and the vitamin A, they're going to cost more money. That's one way they kind of hook you in. The omega-3 part, I do like increased omega-3s because that is a huge issue with most people in this country, that we're not getting enough omega-3s. So we have this imbalance between our omega-3s and our omega-6s. And if that balance or that ratio isn't right or correct, higher omega-6 content will tip all of us towards increased inflammation in our body. And I'm sure I've said this before in many other talks. We don't want that, because any inflammation that's increased in our body, that contributes towards any sort of disease, illness, anything else that we may have. So we're always looking to decrease inflammation. So having that omega-3 supplement isn't necessarily a bad thing. In the case of dairy products, though, or a lot of food products, the way that they're supplementing omega-3 is not in the most useful form. So we have, if you take omega-3 supplements now, you probably see that there's that DHA and that EPA that's been in your pill. But the type that they're usually adding to your dairy products is ALA. And your body needs a lot more ALA to convert into DHA. So it's not as useful maybe as it may seem, but every little bit helps too. So there's that. As far as probiotics go, that's a big thing. Some people like Activia yogurt, that's why they're using it. The world of probiotics is pretty big, and not everybody kind of realizes that. We just think, oh, there's probiotics, great. They're not all equal, and we could have a whole separate discussion on just probiotics. In fact, I was just listening, well, during quarantine, I was listening to like a 4-day seminar on just your intestinal biome and probiotics. So there's tons of them out there. If you're looking for probiotics in something, think about why you're doing it. Is it because you want to boost immunity? Is it because you're taking an antibiotic and you need to replenish the bacteria in your gut? Because bacteria are different for different reasons. And you'll want a different strain for one reason than you would for another. I am not an expert in that area. I wish I was. I'm working on it. But that's definitely something. Do a little research if that's what you're looking for, to make sure that you get the correct strain. I mean, in general, though, you want a lot of them. So if something says it has at least 1 billion or more, that's going to be better than something that has less than that. But like one article I was reading, which I love, the doctor's like, yeah, probiotics are good, but what would be better for people is just eating better, eating healthier. Because for most of us, if we would change our eating habits and provide what the bacteria in our gut want and need, we wouldn't necessarily be looking for probiotics. So trying to eat more prebiotics, which is what the bacteria feed on and what supports the healthy ones and gets rid of the bad ones. So more fiber is essentially the answer for that. So vegetables, fruits, whole grains when you have grain products, those are the things that are going to feed your good bacteria. But if you're looking for some other beneficial probiotic foods, have any of you guys ever tried kefir? No? Some, yes. Okay, so if you've never tried kefir, I encourage you to do it. It's tasty. It's like a little yogurt smoothie kind of. So it's in the dairy aisle, more so by, or if you've ever had, it's not Go-Gurt, it's like yogurt. I don't think that's a product anymore, but I remember yogurt, or not yogurt, Yo-J, something like that. But it was a yogurt smoothie that you would find in a carton. It's sort of like that, but it's a lot better. It's a fermented dairy product. So you'll actually kind of, if you really pay close attention when you drink it, there's little tiny bubbles because it's fermented. But it has that benefits of fermentation, which means that it's a good probiotic. And you can, it's just like yogurts and chocolate milk versus white milk, though. If you don't want all the added sugar, then you have to buy plain, because all the different flavors are sweetened. At least for us, I tend to buy plain and a flavored and then mix them with the ratio that I want so that there's not as much sweetness for my kids. But my youngest son especially, he notices good results GI-wise when he drinks kefir on a somewhat regular basis. Otherwise, he runs into some issues, even though he's my healthiest eater ever. So consider that. Look into it if you want. It's another good option. This one we're not going to spend much time on at all, but I find it interesting that the dairy world is trying to get in on the energy drink kind of phenomenon that's out there. You'll find more dairy coffee blends, like that Oikos protein drink. It also has caffeine because it's blended with coffee beans and things like that. So it's out there. It's another option. I love my caffeine, but I'd rather get it from just straight coffee and not put in something. And energy drinks, I'm never ever a fan of, not for anybody. So that's why we're not spending a lot of time there, because just don't do it. Okay, then as far as digestion goes, because there are tons of people that like milk and want to have milk, and yet they are uncomfortable when they have it, but they want to have dairy milk. There are some people who will find that just switching to goat milk, they have a lot of good results. Goat milk is more gamey, is a good term for it. So if you've never had it, try it, but it's definitely going to taste more animal-y. But there's like babies and things that have GI issues, they might resolve those by drinking goat milk. So that's another option. But there's lots more lactose-free options out there. I mean, again, even 10 years ago, there weren't as many, so you can still be drinking that. There's probiotic options out there that might help, because if we're feeding the good bacteria and providing the good bacteria, then it's going to help us be able to digest that lactose. There's fermented products like we just talked about, kefir, and that can help with digestion. And then there's products like the one pictured called A2 milk. Has anyone seen that or used that? I have not personally tried it, but it sounds, from people that I know who have, it tastes pretty much the same. So you're not losing out on taste there. So the difference with this is that there's a couple different milk proteins in there called A1 and A2. The majority of cows that we get our milk from have a blend of these two proteins, and humans tend to react more or be sensitive more to this A1 protein. So A2 milk, they only have cows that solely produce the A2 protein. So they prevent that crossbreeding that brings in the A1. So for some people, they find that they're able to handle the fact that it still has lactose, because it does. They haven't taken out the lactose at all. It's just that we're not reacting to the protein in it. So that could be an option if you're finding that you're sensitive to milk. You could discover, is it because of the proteins? Is it because of the lactose? Lots of things that are out there.